Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Ferrybach, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the July 24th, 2024 meeting of the United States Access Board. Uh, and the meeting is being conducted in Washington, D.C., and it's a pleasure for me to be your chair. And I also do apologize that I'm not in D.C. Today, but had a little hiccup uh, with the wheelchair, etc., back in Indianapolis. So I am uh, remotely participating at this point today, and I do thank everybody for attending as well as your patience in getting through the technical problems that we sometimes have. We're ready to go, and we will move forward. Also joining me today is uh, Katie Kale, Vice Chair of the United States Access Board, as well as Sasha Paladin, who is our Executive Director of the United States Access Board. Today's agenda will include three committee votes, and we will be, this is being handled hybridly, so I will remind everyone that the microphones and the cameras should be and remain off unless you are specifically called upon or are prepared to speak. For members joining us online, make sure that your hand raising tool is available and that you use the hand raising tool when you wish to have access, etc. So we'll move forward now too at this particular point. And at this point, I'm going to have Rosemarie call for the quorum. Rose?
This is Rosemary passing it to David O'Keefe.
You know what? I apologize. I have been here, Rose, for you doing this for so many. You've always been the person. So, yes, thank you, David. I apologize. David?
That's quite all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Rosemary. Alvar Ariza Silva,
Present.
Olivia Asuncion,
Present.
Department of Health and Human Services, Allison Barkoff, Department of Health and Human Services, Allison Barkoff, Department of Veterans Affairs, Michael Brenner,
Present.
Department of Defense, Gilbert Cisneros, Department of Defense, Gilbert Cisneros, Department of Justice, Kristen Clark, Department of Justice, Kristen Clark,
This is Rosemary Access Board. I do have Joy Whelan in the remote, and I also have a directed proxy to the chair.
Oh, I do see Allison Barkoff and Joy Whalen. We're unmuting you now.
Hi, sorry, we weren't able to unmute. This is Allison Barkoff from HHS. I'm here. And Joy, it looks like you can now say you're here too.
Yes, good afternoon. For some reason, the unmuting function was disabled, but this is Joy Whalen on behalf of Assistant Attorney General Clark, proxy to the chair.
Thank you. Department of Transportation, Christopher Coase. Department of Transportation, Christopher Coase. Heather Dowdy,
Present.
Stephanie Enyart,
Present.
Gregory Farabach.
Present.
Thank you. Department of Education, Lana Gallo.
Present.
Thank you. Tina Gannett.
Present.
Thank you. Amy Hamraya.
Present.
Thank you. Anna Ibanez.
Present.
Thank you. Carmen Jones.
Present.
Thank you. General Services Administration, Katie Kale.
Present.
Thank you. Alexis Ander Kashar.
Present.
Thank you. United States Postal Service, Benjamin Kuo. United States Postal Service, Benjamin Kuo.
I believe that I am present by proxy for Mr. Kuo today. Okay, never mind. Strike that.
Okay. KR Liu. KR Liu. Benjamin Nadolski.
Present.
Thank you. Department of Commerce, Jeremy Pelter.
This is Rosemary, Access Board staff. I do have a proxy to the chair from Department of Commerce.
Madeline Rose Ruvalo.
Present.
Thank you. Department of Labor, Taryn Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Department of the Interior,
Sloan Farrell from Department of Interior, present. Proxy to the chair.
Department of Housing and Urban Development,
Staff Liaison Rex Pace is present.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And thanks for everybody's attendance. That being said, we can now move on to the approval of the board minutes, the draft board minutes of the January 24th, strike that, January 224 minutes of our last United States Access Board meeting hearing. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? January 24, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries. The minutes are approved. All right, it is now our time to move to the election of officers of the United States Access Board. And it's my privilege to turn the meeting over at that point to conduct that opportunity to Chris Kozatsky, one of the best lawyers that I happen to know in the United States. So Chris.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, and we'll first proceed to the election of the chair and vice chair of the Access Board. Their terms will run until April of 2025. Typically, elections are held in April as a result of the 2022 amendments to the bylaws that reduce the number of meetings each year from 6 to 4. This year, however, the board had its out-of-town meeting in Los Angeles, and so elections were deferred to this meeting. Currently, the chair is a public member, Greg Faribach, and the vice chair is a federal member, Katie Kale. Pursuant to the Rehabilitation Act, which established the Access Board, and to the Access Board bylaws, the chair and vice chair alternate between public and federal members each year. As a result, the incoming chair must be a federal member, and the incoming vice chair must be a public member. Since the last board meeting, Executive Director Pavathon has received nominations for the positions of chair and vice chair. Katie Kale of the General Services Administration, and the current vice chair has been nominated as chair. Elva Ariza Silva has been nominated as vice chair. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, is there a motion to elect Katie Kale as chair of the Access Board and Elva Ariza Silva as vice chair by acclamation?
I'll make that motion. This is Tina.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Katie and Elver, on your being elected. We now proceed to the elections for standing committee or subject matter committee chairs. The Access Board currently has 4 standing committees: Budget, Frontiers, Planning and Evaluation, and Technical Programs. Executive Director Pavathon has received the following nominations for standing committee chairs to serve its terms ending also in April 2025. For the Budget Committee, Stephanie Enyart. For the Frontiers Committee, Matty Ruvolo. For the Planning and Evaluation Committee, Tina Gannett. And for the Technical Programs Committee, Benjamin Nadolski. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, is there a motion to elect the slate of subject matter or standing committee chairs by acclamation?
I make a motion to vote.
Is there a second?
Second, this is Elver Ariza Silva.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Congratulations to the chairs of the Access Board standing committees. Last, we will elect the at-large members of the Executive Committee. Under the board's bylaws, the Executive Committee is composed of the chair and vice chair of the board, the chairs of subject matter committees, and additional at-large members as necessary to balance the number of federal and public members on the Executive Committee. As there are 4 subject matter committees and each will be chaired by a public member, the board must elect 4 federal at-large members of the Executive Committee. Prior to today's meeting, Executive Director Pavathon received the following nominations to serve as at-large members. Allison Barkov of HHS, Taryn Williams, Department of Labor, Benjamin Kuo of United States Postal Service, and Michael Brennan of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, is there a motion that the 4 nominees for positions as at-large members of the Executive Committee be elected by acclamation?
I'll make that motion. This is Tina.
Is there a
This is
second?
Glenna. I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of electing these 4 at-large members by acclamation, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. Are there any abstentions? Congratulations to the elected at-large members of the Executive Committee. And this concludes the elections of Access Board officers and committee members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Or Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chris. So before we go any further, I just want to take a moment to thank Greg for his leadership. This board, he led the board with compassion and energy and certainly a great sense of humor. And he really helped us get some major accomplishments completed during his tenure. Greg, it has been a pleasure to work with you and so amazing to get to know you. I know that your legacy will continue to inspire us all. And I also know that you're just a phone call away. So thank you for everything you do. And if you will join me in a round of applause for Greg.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, so now we go to Sachin Pavasran for his report. Sachin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations, Madam Chair, for becoming the chair, and Elver for being the vice chair. Congratulations. Looking forward to working with both of you. And also congratulations to all the chairs of the standing committees. So looking forward to working with each one of you. Before I start with my report, I do also want to recognize Greg Fairback. I've had the opportunity to serve with Greg in a different role when I was a board member on the Access Board. I had the opportunity to serve as a board member with Greg, and now as executive director under Greg's chairmanship. He has served as chairman twice since he has come on the board. And I appreciate Greg for everything that you have done so far. We do have a plaque, Greg, that we will mail to you. It's
Sure. So this is Amy. I have the plaque here for Greg. So it is a dark crystal, and it has a crystal gavel representing your role as chair with your name and the U.S. Access Board logo, as well as recognition as your board chair from March of 2023 to July of 2024. So thank you so much for your service, and we look forward to sending this to you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Greg, for your service, and I hope you know we'll still be calling on you.
Well, I look forward to it, and thanks everyone. It's been a pleasure and is a pleasure to serve with great Americans like you guys. I do want to also mention that Sachin's leadership over the last several years has been heroic, and we've had some bumps along the way, whether it be from a political perspective or from a pandemic perspective. And without Sachin, I can tell you that we wouldn't be in as good a shape as we have been in, and it's an honor and privilege. Katie, good luck. Elver, good luck. I'm here to help you out. Oftentimes, Katie, you are very kind saying that I have a bit of humor. As you all know, humor gets us through Washington, D.C., and not taking ourselves too much credit for everything, and enjoy a laugh or two with friends and colleagues as we go. So cheers to everyone. I am around, and I'm here to help in any way I possibly can, and continue the good work. Thank you all.
Thank you, Greg. All right, I'll start off my report with the rulemaking update. So I'll start with the medical diagnostic equipment rule. As you all know, we sent the medical diagnostic equipment final rule to OMB for their interagency review in January. I feel like I can announce that the medical diagnostic equipment rule has been finalized, and it will be published tomorrow in the Federal Register. So congratulations to everyone who's worked on this rule. The next one is the EV charging stations, the electric vehicle charging station. That rule was sent to OMB in November of 2023. It is still undergoing interagency review. As soon as the interagency review concludes, it will be open for public comment, a 60-day public comment, and I encourage you to please share it with your colleagues so that we can receive those public comments. The next one is the self-service transaction machine. on May 20th of 2024, we had a notational ballot to send the SSTM and PRM to OMB for their interagency review. So it's currently undergoing interagency review. This NPRM proposes to update our guidelines under Title II and Title III of the ADA and also the Architectural Barriers Act. This will include specifications under specifications for fixed self-service transaction machines, which are broadly defined. Currently, there are only few self-service transaction machines that have criteria for accessibility, which is the ATMs and fare cards under the ABA and ADA. We have kiosks under the Air Carrier Access Act. We have self-service transaction machines under Section 508 as well. So this will broadly define accessibility criteria for SSTM in buildings, sites, public right-of-way, and transportation vehicles. Once we finish the interagency review, there will be a 60-day public comment period, and I hope you will encourage your colleagues to comment on that as well. The last rule that we have started on working on is the rail vehicle accessibility guidelines. Staff is working on the text for this rule. Our hope is to have a NPRM package ready for the board's consideration and then to send it on to OMB, hopefully by early 2025. This rule, once it's ready, it will address accessibility criteria under rapid, light, commuter, and intercity rail vehicles. Next, I want to talk about the technical assistance and trainings that we provide through the Access Board. Over the last 2 quarters, that's beginning January 1st through July 1st, we have provided over 3,200 unique technical assistance around the country. This consists of the built environment and Section 508. We have provided over 72 webinars and trainings over the last 2 quarters, reaching over 16,000 participants. We are also expanding our usage of our YouTube channel to provide trainings, providing archives of all our trainings. And over the last 2 quarters, we've had over 26,000 unique views for our PROACT training and our animation videos that is found on our YouTube channel. Our Section 508 team has also been very busy with the interagency consensus on accessibility of electronic digital documents and accessibility conformance project and ICT baseline testing portfolio. Section 508 teams also engaged with GSA and OMB with various guidance that they are involved in Section 508 implementation across the federal government. Many of you may know there was an executive order that came out late 2023. It's the executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy development of artificial intelligence. The U.S. Access Board has been tasked to work with the disability community to educate on what the impacts of AI on the disability community. And in doing so, we have partnered with two non-federal partners, which is AAPD, which is the American Association for People with Disabilities, and the Center on Democracy and Technology. We went into a memorandum of understanding in May, and we will look forward to working closely with these 2 partners. We do have public hearings happening under this topic. The first one took place in, just a couple of weeks ago. We had a initial start of this AI public hearings on July 9th. There should be three more public hearings coming in August. August 8th, focusing with the disability community. There'll be two public hearings in the morning and the afternoon of August 8th. And then there'll be another one focusing on federal sector and the industry on August 22nd. Next, excuse me, next I want to touch on the Architectural Barriers Act enforcement. Between January 1st and June 30th, we have received about 177 complaints. We have closed 157 of those 177 complaints. Out of the 157 complaints that were closed, 63 of them were closed after corrective actions. 15 were closed. 15 closed after there was no corrective actions needed. Sorry, I got those numbers mixed up. 15 was closed with no jurisdiction under the ABA. 17 were closed with no correction action needed. And 62 of them were referred to a different federal agency that has authority on the complaint that came through. On July 3rd, GSA published PROAG, and thank you, Katie, for your leadership on that. So the Access Board issued our final rule on PROAG summer of last year, August of last year, and GSA has adopted and finalized the PROAG under their rulemaking process. Couple public affairs activities. The Access Board has been involved in some few different activities, a couple of invitations under the White House. In February, the Access Board was invited to speak under equity, and I was given the opportunity to speak about how accessibility is an important factor when we are discussing equity. So it was an honor for me to speak at the White House to ensure accessibility is always part of the conversation when we discuss equity. During the Global Accessibility Awareness Day, the Access Board was also invited to speak on digital accessibility, where I was able to address the crowd on how digital accessibility is a critical component on every work that we do, and inclusion, for full inclusion, digital accessibility should always be taken into consideration. We've also had a few international related activities. Myself and Allison Levy, Director of Office of Technical and Information Services, were invited to speak at the Zero Project in Vienna, Austria, to discuss global accessibility and how regulations are being created and implemented in the US. It was a great opportunity for both of us to educate the work that's happening in the US and also to learn on what activities are happening worldwide. We were also, Allison and myself, we were also invited to be delegates to the UN under the UN delegation for US. This took place June of this year. I had the opportunity to speak with several different delegations from around the world. I also was given the opportunity to provide closing remarks at the C+5, which is the Central Asia plus Central Asia 5 countries and US gathering in the UN. So at during this remarks, I was asked to speak about the importance of how accessibility regulations are created within the US, but also encouraging the work that is happening in Central Asia. So it was a great honor for me to represent the US at the UN during this event. You will hear briefly about our out-of-town meeting from our public affairs person, Amy Nieves, shortly, but we did have our out-of-town meeting in Los Angeles in April, which was a very successful out-of-town board meeting. A lot of topics were covered, and Amy will be going more in detail about that meeting. Before we conclude, I just want to touch on some of the staffing changes that has taken place over the last 6 months. Josh Shore has been named the TA coordinator for the Access Board. Tim Cregan used to be the Section 508 senior accessibility person, now has moved into the Office of General Counsel as a senior compliance officer for Architecture Barriers Act. Amy Nieves started as public affairs person in April. India Thomas has been appointed as the Director of Administration. Drew Gordon was appointed as Chief of Staff. Charles Washington, for those who know, has retired after 30 years of service from the Access Board. And Scott Winley, who is, I don't know what Scott's here or not. Yes, Scott Winley, who worked with the Access Board for the last 27 years, has decided to join HUD. So I'll leave it at that. But we still like you, Rex, for stealing Scott. So those are the staffing changes that has taken place over the last 6 months. There's a lot of activities happening at the Access Board. There's a lot of work yet to be done. I appreciate all the support I have from all of you, the board members, but also the public at large, who makes sure that we stay in tune with what is needed to happen to ensure full accessibility. Thank you. With that, I'll turn it to you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you, Sachin. As Sachin mentioned, we have Amy Nieves in her still new role of Public Affairs Specialist, who's going to give us the report of our Los Angeles event.
Thank you, Katie. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, this is Amy Nieves speaking, and I'm going to give a report. The full report is in the board packet for your full review, so I'm going to just highlight some things from that report for the board's awareness. So during the week of April 15th of 2024, the Access Board did travel to Los Angeles for our 2024 out-of-town board meeting, with two main goals. The first was that the board was seeking to hear from residents, advocates, and local government leaders regarding key accessibility issues in that region. And secondly, the board was hopeful to seek out more understanding on the accessibility issues and needs in the entertainment sector, one of Los Angeles's key industries, and an area of which we have not explored. So our report has summarized the key activities and observations from that time. So I'm going to just give a brief overview of the town hall outcomes and then talk about a couple key observations of our activities that were from the town hall, but also our meetings. And some of the highlights were around the public's rights of way, transportation, the film and television industry access needs, the profound need for accessible housing in that region, as well as the outstanding needs around Olympic and Paralympic planning. And we'll actually hear more around that topic from our presenter momentarily. And so with that, with the town hall, which was held on Tuesday, April 16th, it was well attended by more than 100 people. And in addition to Vice Chair at the time, Katie Cal, opening the meeting at that time, we heard from residents and government leaders, and Deputy Mayor Brenda Shockley, who is the Deputy Mayor of Economic Opportunity for the City of Los Angeles, provided opening remarks. And I do want to just note that the Deputy Mayor was present at most of our meetings, and it was wonderful to have that engagement from the city. We also heard from over 30 residents and individuals that provided public comment. And throughout our visit, we definitely learned about those key issues, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to go into them. And this is a combination of both from the public comments, but also from our observations in our standing meetings. So the first area I wanted to touch on was the public rights of way. Access Board staff did provide a well-attended and well-received training on PROAG for local leaders while we were there. But we also heard repeatedly from residents and advocates throughout our time that week about the widespread inaccessibility of sidewalk conditions and intersections that have created significant barriers for local residents with disabilities. And so we were able to engage with the city on this matter. And city officials have indicated that there are some pilot efforts underway to collect more data on sidewalk conditions that could be used in the future to prioritize remedy efforts. Additionally, I wanted to note our observations around APS, accessible pedestrian signals. So during our visit, we were able to observe that there are APS devices installed and functioning, but unusable due to low volume settings. So this was something that was able to be corrected because of our observations and engagement with the city. And we've encouraged the city to continue to check all of their installed APS devices to ensure that they are functioning and have appropriate volume settings. And then I want to move to transportation. So with that, some feedback from board members as well, that there were concerns around airport transportation and the accessibility and ease of access to transportation. And so we have encouraged the city to assess wheelchair accessible airport transportation options, particularly ahead of their planned hosting of the Olympics and Paralympics. Additionally, a positive notation was around paratransit is that Access Services, which is LA's paratransit organization, has implemented interim stops, which is for parents with disabilities program that allows parents with disabilities to also add during their stops to drop off or pick up their children from school. So that was wonderful to see. Moving to the entertainment industry, we learned a significant amount around the state of accessibility in the entertainment space. We actually spent an entire day with meetings with representatives of the entertainment industry to better understand these challenges faced by working professionals with disabilities in the industry. And this was held by our host at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, where filmmaker Jim LeBrecq, who produced Crip Camp, and producer Terry Hartman Squire led our roundtable discussions that day. And some of the things that came from that was around that there is a fear of retaliation for raising accessible needs in this industry. And so it has caused many of the professionals to not seek out addressing these concerns openly. That there was also a lack of compliance with existing requirements. And some of the things that were shared was a lack of accessible restrooms near audition workspaces, lack of accessible parking, lack of accessible routes. And we were informed that there are only 2 accessible actor trailers available for the entire industry in that region. So that was something that we learned, as well as in consideration for child actors who might have an individualized education plan in place, that there are barriers that are faced by that. Some of the positives that we learned was that the Real Abilities Film Festival was highly revered and responsive to amplifying disability voices, representation, and actors and writers and developers with disabilities. And this is in partnership with the city, and it embodies inclusivity and accessibility in film. And so with that, I wanted to kind of move to a couple of highlights. As I mentioned, accessible housing was brought forward both at the town hall and throughout our meetings with disability advocates. We had a meeting with Disability Rights California that helped give us kind of the lay of the land around voting, housing, and other barriers, and also many successes as well. And with that, I wanted to move to the Olympic and Paralympic planning. The board noted that Los Angeles has an opportunity to become a world leader in accessibility as they move forward as the host of the 28 Olympic and Paralympic Games, and that the Games must reflect that the United States is a world leader in accessibility for persons with disability. And we encourage both the city and the LA 28 planners and organizers to continue to prioritize planning for accessibility in the Games. Some of which that were noted was the location of housing of the athletes is in a very hilly section of the city. There is also plans for a carless games and the need to consider both the accessible transit needs of current residents, but also of the workforce and the athletes that will be coming to LA regarding their mobility hubs. and the distances walking and the barriers along those walking routes that may arise. Additionally, during our site visit, we were able to observe some of the planned hosting environments and we're able to provide feedback in real time around the Metro Rail and the convention center, where there are some concrete bollards in front that were recommended to be removed, as well as the APS addressing. The last recommendation was around adult changing tables to be encouraged for both athletes, visitors, spectators, and the workforce, and the way in which the accessible planning can lead to outcomes that remain for ongoing after the games. So the last thing that I just wanted to point out was, after the LA visit, we've been intentional to stay in touch with the city. We've held 2 meetings. One was a debriefing meeting with Deputy Mayor Shockley and the Department on Disability staff, where we were able to provide this feedback and our key observations and talk about some opportunities to continue to go forward. So we will continue to engage with the city representatives in that way. And then, because of the amount of focus on the film industry, we were able to facilitate a meeting between the Los Angeles Film County Commission and the City of Los Angeles post our visit to talk around some remedies that include possible research opportunities, as well as taking a look at their permitting of where they could possibly leverage more opportunities to amplify accessibility. So with that, that concludes my report, and I turn it back over to Katie at this time.
Thank you, Amy, for putting together that post-activity report. And thank you also, Amy, and everyone else who helped to put together the agenda and make sure that the entire week was a success. Overall, members and staff who attended the out-of-town event back in April heard great feedback from each of the organizations that we met with. And it's this sort of dialogue that we need to make sure that we're keeping open. And it sounds like, especially with the city of LA, we're continuing to do that. So thank you for that report and all the efforts around that. Okay, so next we're going to move on to our guest presentation. I have to say that I think this guest presentation is the favorite thing on the agenda from my team, at least, and that does include me being voted to be the chairman. They're very excited. And if you were here with us in LA, you will remember her from the town hall and the panel meeting with the city leaders on LA 28 Olympic Games. Candace Cable is here to talk about the importance of accessibility for the Olympics and the Paralympics, as well as identifying design elements needed for the planning of the games. She serves on the U.S. International Council on Disabilities, the Southern California Olympians and Paralympians Association, and the City of Los Angeles's Mayor's Disability Commission. Please welcome 9-time U.S. Paralympian from California, Candace Cable.
Hello, everyone. And
hello. Thank you so much for coming out, Candace. We're really honored to have you for this opportunity to speak with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm zooming in from the unceded lands of the Tongva Nation, also known as Los Angeles. I'm a 70-year-old Caucasian woman with chin-length blonde, white, brown hair, wearing black rimmed glasses, 2 small red earrings, a dark blue sweater, and a green scarf, and I'm sitting on a wheelchair. And behind me is a wall that is filled with art and Dara Baldwin's book, To Be a Problem. I offer a really, truly great gratitude and thank you to the Access Board for once again giving me this platform to share my perspective on the opportunities we, and I say we, because this will require a collaborative effort to leave no one behind and raise the low bar of compliance attached to the ADA, 504, and other laws that support access and inclusion for disabled people. I support us to raise this bar on all levels to the next level of universal design that will truly address everyone's needs in these really changing times. The opportunity we have before us is the Olympic and Paralympic Games coming to Los Angeles in 2028. This can create a paradigm shift for the highest level of access and inclusion for everyone. I experienced this shift when it happened before in 2012, London Paralympic Games, and we can take it to the next level paradigm shift. But we have work to do together, and it starts now. I have 3 things that I want to offer and suggest as we move forward towards an all-inclusive society: education, collective responsibility, and collaborations. Education is a key component to this paradigm shift. This has to be done, and it was done in London, and it worked. We can take the education action further. In London, education on the Paralympic Games was pushed through the schools. What are the games? Who are they? What are the sports? This is important because many people have never heard of the Paralympic Games, and they often say Olympic Games, believing that this includes both games, and it doesn't. And we can change that, and we need to change that because it is the Olympic and Paralympic Games that are coming to Los Angeles. And this will be the first time that the Paralympic Games will be held in Los Angeles. Los Angeles will have held the Olympic Games 3 times in 2028. Then there's education about disabled people and the laws that guarantee and protect how we all connect and interact, non-disabled and disabled folks together in shared experiences like the Games. An example of actions being taken already is the recent Access Board that you heard of coming to Los Angeles and the meetings that took place. They brought attention to this important board and to create an ongoing conversation that disabled people with lived experience must lead the way. By bringing the ADA into the conversation, it will start with the LA 28 and their venue audits that are happening now. This can offer insights on how the world has changed since the ADA, and has, people with disabilities have changed too. We have all kinds of new mobility equipment that we didn't have 34 years ago. And that was brought forward by Amy, the idea of changing tables. These adult changing tables are critical, not just for spectators and the community, but for the athletes and for staff. And they would enhance the venues greatly. So these are the kind of things that can begin to be brought forward. Another example is that the Disability Commission for the City of Los Angeles has begun putting letters forward to the City Council and the Mayor's Office to standardize the language around the Games so that everyone is saying the same thing. The second one is collective responsibility. It's a term I learned from the leadership of the Department on Disability for the City of Los Angeles. Collective responsibility can make access and inclusion happen in LA by integrating accessibility and the people with lived experience throughout the work preparing for and implementing the Games, from now until the last celebration. But we can't rely on one or a few experts. The Disability Committee is not a monolith, and this scope of work opportunity is too great to stay with a small or scarcity mindset. This means we need to notice who's not here and that the most marginal people are elevated in leadership, including Black, Brown, Indigenous, and queer people with disabilities. Everyone needs to make access first a priority consideration in work, and leaders need to hold their teams accountable to this work. Regular and scheduled checking in with LA 28 Organizing Committee for the Games, the City of Los Angeles, the Department of Disability, the Disability Commission, and the community collaborators will be necessary to create this paradigm shift. It is a time for nothing without us. Finally, in my 3 that I'm bringing forward now, but I have more, is collaborations. An important part of the games is the public spaces and paths of travel that will be taken over by the games, basically. We, disabled and non-disabled, will benefit from the infrastructure access changes that are happening now to accommodate the games. So the needs of mobility and information access is brought forward now at the beginning stages. That's why we need to collaborate with disabled and non-disabled people to engage in these changes. And this is led by people with lived experience of the barriers that exist now. Too many of our organizations work in silos. This doesn't serve our missions of equity, access, and inclusion for everyone, and to be able to choose opportunities that we want to take part in. An example of a new collaboration in transportation and public right-of-way of access spaces is the DTLA All Access Network. This collaboration of disability organizations and non-disabled organizations is making inroads with city structures to audit the existing barriers and then work to remove these barriers. The intention is to innovate new universally designed transportation concepts and public paths of travel. Keeping all this in mind as we work together to affect positive social change, I would like to mention two final things. In Paris, we're seeing the aguitos, the symbols of the Paralympic Games, on the Arc de Triomphe. This has never happened before during the Olympic Games. There has never been signage before of the Paralympic Games. So this is huge, and it's also a monumental moment. And finally, Salt Lake City, Utah was just given the 2034 Winter Paralympic and Olympic Games. And it's now time to connect with that city, their Department of Transportation, their Department of Disability, the organizing committee, all of them. We need to get to them now so that we can start and move forward in these conversations together. I look forward for all of us to be working together in the coming years and celebrating our collective liberation. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you so much, Candace. I know I will be thinking about your three themes from today, and I hope to hear more of them. But education, collective responsibility, and collaboration are definitely going to be sticking with me. So thank you so much for speaking with us and joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. So next, we're going to move on to our standing committee reports. We're going to start with technical programs. The outgoing chair of technical programs and now vice chair of the board, Elver Arias Silva, Josh Shore are going to give us the updates.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Elver Ariza Silva, and I am going to share with you all the Technical Programs Committee report. We met on Monday, and certainly Mr. Josh Shore updated the board about Scott Wilney's departure and Josh's new position as Technical Assistance Coordinator. He then proceeded to present an update for the number of technical assistant questions, the number of trainings and webinars, and the number of training participants for the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 2024. The rest of the Technical Program Committee meeting was a presentation by the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living and Rehabilitation Research Administration for Community Living, NIDILRI. It's easier for me to say it in that way. Christy Hill provided information about the Administration for Community Living, ACL, as part of the Department of Health and Human Services. Brian Bart provided information about the NIDILRR and the types of work that they do. And Dr. Katie Klinich presented reports of their study on evaluating wheelchair crashworthiness for potential use as aircraft seating. After the presentation, we asked board members to send any question to Josh or Brian Bart. And finally, I want to say thank you so much to Mr. Josh and Mr. Scott for welcoming me as a chair of the Technical Programs Committee, learning from you all and keeping the lessons learned during that time. Thank you so much. And with this, I conclude my report.
Great, thank you, Elver. Moving now to the Planning and Evaluation Committee. Hannah Ibanez is the chair and Francis Spiegel, the staff liaison. So Hannah, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Ibanez, and I am the immediate past chair of the Planning and Evaluation Committee. The Planning and Evaluation Committee met on Monday morning, and at our meeting, we announced that the Access Board's Public Affairs Specialist, Amy Nieves, will be the new staff liaison to the committee. And she will be taking over for Attorney Advisor Francis Spiegel, who has served as the staff liaison for over 7 years. So we thank her very much for her service. After that, we debriefed the Access Board's visit to Los Angeles. You already heard from Amy about all of the incredible interactions that we had in LA, and I want to express my appreciation to the board for visiting my home city and bringing attention to our unique accessibility issues. We then heard from staff regarding the initial planning efforts for our 2025 visit to New Orleans. Our town hall will be held the morning of Wednesday, July 9th, 2025 at the New Orleans Marriott. So for anyone who will be in New Orleans, please mark your calendars. Finally, the board heard a proposal from public member and newly elected Planning and Evaluation Committee Chair, Tina Gwinnett, to hold the board's 2026 out-of-town meeting in Providence, Rhode Island. The committee voted to accept that proposal. Therefore, Madam Chair, expressing the will of the committee, I move that the board's 2026 out-of-town meeting be held in Providence, Rhode Island.
All right, so we have a motion to hold the board's 2026 out-of-town meeting in Providence, Rhode Island. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? All right.
The Department
motion
of Justice
carries.
abstains because it's not covered in our proxy.
Thank you.
You could
Yes.
note the abstention. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, the motion carries. Congratulations. See you in Rhode Island in 2026.
See you in Rhode Island. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Access Board's 2026 out-of-town meeting will be held in Providence, Rhode Island, May 5th through 6th, 2026. And if there are no questions, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to budget. Benjamin Nadolski is the chair and India Thomas, the staff liaison. Benjamin, can you give us the update, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For our 2024 budget, currently the Access Board as of July 18th has spent approximately 76% of its full year budget, and that is within normal bounds. As for the fiscal year 2025 budget, we have received our budget passed back from OMB. The funding is in alignment with our 2024 funding level. As for the fiscal year 2026, we've begun the budget formulation process, and a request is due to OMB by September 9th, 2024. We'll provide updates in our next meeting. That's all, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you, Benjamin. On to frontier issues. Madeline Revolno. Thank you. Yes, I have a problem. I apologize. Is the chair. Madeline, I apologize for the name. And Deborah Martins is the staff liaison. Madeline, the update, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's Madeline Ruvolo. At Wednesday's meeting of the Committee on Frontier Issues, the board heard 2 presentations. Dr. Abimbola Asojo, licensed architect and dean and professor at Morgan State University, discussed addressing the disproportionate impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic in BIPOC communities through design. She reviewed the data specific to COVID-19 as it relates to the areas of the built environment that provide opportunities for intervention. Dr. Asojo also identified multiple interventions to mitigate the spread of viruses, such as UV lighting, easily cleanable furnishings, and indoor and outdoor ventilation strategies. Lastly, she reviewed ongoing research and projects that address green infrastructure and nature-based solutions and indoor environmental quality to promote health and well-being. Dr. Emily Dupree, professor of philosophy at Loyola University in Chicago and founder of the Clean Air Club, discussed cleaning the indoor air as a permanent solution to the ongoing threat of indoor transmission of airborne pathogens. She provided background context of early public health crises specific to contaminated water sources, emphasizing how our health is intertwined with public infrastructure. Dr. Dupree suggested that we are in the same position now with indoor air as we were in an earlier pandemic with water. She provided current COVID-19 statistics and the subsequent costly disease burden of COVID and long COVID in the United States. Dr. Dupree discussed 3 main built environment recommendations that can be applied. First, to install clean air technology in government buildings to the greatest extent possible, to have the clean air technology be installed with air quality standards set by ASHRAE, specifically standard 241, and 3, targeted mask requirements be reinstated in high-risk congregate settings. She also provided more specific recommendations to the U.S. Access Board and multiple other federal agencies, and spoke about the importance of clean air technology in all buildings across the country. The presentations were followed by an engaging discussion between board members and the presenters. If there are no questions, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Madeline. Next, on to the Election Assistance Commission. For the Election Assistance Commission report, we have Hannah and Benjamin again, with Bruce Bailey providing staff support. Hannah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. By statute, 2 Access Board members participate in 2 standing committees of the Elections Assistance Commission, or EAC. That right now is myself and Benjamin Nadolski to my right. These 2 EAC committees are the Advisory Board and the Technical Guidelines Development Committee, or TGDC. At the January board meeting, we reported on the TGDC annual meeting held in December. The EAC held their Board of Advisors annual meeting on April 18th and 19th in Kansas City, Missouri. Due to scheduling conflict with our Los Angeles out-of-town meeting, we were not able to attend that April meeting. As you would expect, EAC provided an agenda ahead of the meeting and distributed summary notes after the meeting. As background information, the 2002 Help America Vote Act, or HAVA, established the EAC and designated the Board of Advisors to assist EAC in carrying out its responsibilities to improve the administration of elections and to help Americans participate in the voting process. The EAC Board of Advisors consists of 35 members composed of representatives from specified associations, organizations, federal departments, and members of Congress. This in-person meeting was the first opportunity for many introductions, including the new EAC Executive Director, Brianna Schlitz. This EAC Board of Advisors meeting was limited to conducting routine business. EAC Advisory Board members were briefed on agency developments and ongoing activities supporting officials through the administration of grants and development of technical materials and resources. Business included electing the 3 officers of the EAC Board of Advisors. Ricky Hatch, election clerk and auditor with Weber County, Utah, was elected as chair. Scott Schwab, Secretary of State from Kansas, was elected as chair-elect. And Christine Walker, election clerk with Jackson County, Oregon, was elected as secretary. The advisory board also voted to approve updates to their bylaws and pass an administrative resolution on the commissioner's salary. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Hannah. All right, we are going to move now to federal agency updates. So the floor is open to our federal partners for any news or updates that they would like to share. For those remoting in, please use your hand raising tool, and those around the table, please raise your hands. Yes.
Hello, this is Rex Space, Staff Liaison for Department of Housing and Urban Development. Just want to know that we did a joint training session with the Access Board at the latest ADA symposium on federal mandates for accessible housing. It was well received, and we appreciate those joint efforts with our federal partners are important, and we look forward to continuing them in the future. Also, just a reminder, we offer technical assistance on complying with the Fair Housing Act's design and construction requirements for accessibility. This is the non-ADA, non-ABA world. So this is where you can go get some questions on that. The best thing to do is refer to our website, Fair Housing Act, Fair Housing Accessibility First. Probably just as easy to do a word search for it, or send us an email at fairhousingfirst@hud.gov. With that, concludes our report.
Thank you, Rex. Any other federal partners wanting to share? Oh, yes, Taryn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Taryn Williams representing the U.S. Department of Labor. I have just a few updates I want to offer. First, I'll start by saying happy birthday to the anniversary of the ADA, which we'll be celebrating on Friday. But also want to note that we are very close to National Disability Employment Awareness Month, or NDEAM, which we celebrate in October to recognize the value and talent of workers with disabilities. And for this year's theme, in the spirit of some work I'll share, our theme is access to good jobs for all. This is part of our ongoing effort around the Good Jobs Initiative, which is led by the Department of Labor and focused on providing critical information to workers, employers, and government as they work to improve job quality and create access to good jobs, free from discrimination and harassment for all workers, including workers with disabilities. And later this month, actually, I think it might be tomorrow, we'll be releasing a toolkit focused on helping workers with disabilities get ahead through good jobs. This is particularly timely because of the historic investments that we know are being made across the country to develop our physical infrastructure. We want to ensure that not only are those investments spurring an increase in physical accessibility, but they also create jobs for people with disabilities. One additional update I have, which is related to a topic we talked about earlier, artificial intelligence. ODEP's Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology, or PEAT, is also working to make AI hiring tools more inclusive. And we have a forthcoming inclusive hiring framework. It will be published in a couple of weeks and offers employers concrete actions on how they can maximize the benefits of AI hiring technology and break down those existing barriers for people with disabilities. This is a resource that we worked with the National Institute on Science and Technology to create. It was also undertaken with a collaboration with other experts in the areas of disability policy and artificial intelligence. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Taryn.
Madam Chair, this is Rosemary. You have two from the remote. And first one is Michael Fogel, GSA, and then after is Christopher Coase, Department of Transportation.
Great, thank you. Michael, you are up.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my discussion here. Yes, I just wanted to let everybody know that, as Katie does know, the GSA just adopted into their federal management regulations the recently adopted or passed PROAG, pedestrian right-of-way accessibility guidelines. And that we adopted those just before the 4th of July weekend. So that they're up and running and are part of our ABA requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Christopher, your turn.
Good afternoon, everyone. A couple of quick updates on behalf of the Department of Transportation. First, quite timely to the previous presentation, DOT is actively engaging on the 2028 Olympics as well as the 2026 World Cup. We've been working with a number of cities, including Los Angeles, but also the World Cup cities, which includes Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, Miami, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Seattle, as well as LA. As part of the department, we've been engaging to identify some of their transportation needs. And I would like to flag here, we are actively raising accessibility as a core issue in their planning efforts. And I will look forward to continue to working with the Access Board to ensure that we maximize that. We are hosting a number of workshops with many of the World Cup host cities. And so to the extent that we can continue to partner, we look forward to that. The second item I want to provide an update on from the last time we met. On May 28th, our Federal Transit Administration announced that 8 transit systems in 8 states will receive $343 million in funding to help make our rail stations more accessible. Some of the selected projects included the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. They received $16 million to rehabilitate 8 stations, which will make the entire Blue Line in Cleveland accessible. We gave an additional $156 million to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York City to improve 5 stations, which will install new elevators, update platforms to reduce gaps, and also make additional updates to some stairways and the like. And we also gave them nearly $5 million to the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency that will improve 7 light rail stops by making them more accessible to mobility impaired residents who are currently unable to use those stations. I know my dear colleague who may be in the room, Kelly Buckland, recently attended a major groundbreaking under our ASAP program in Philadelphia, where we are upgrading and converting 6 subway stations to make them ADA accessible. The last thing I would flag for situational awareness, DOT released a notice of proposed rulemaking back in February 2024 that proposed a range of measures aimed at ensuring that airline passengers who use wheelchairs can travel safely and with dignity. I just want to note here that the comment period closed on June 12th, and the department received over 2,000 comments, which is great. And with that, we are currently reviewing those comments as of today, and we're looking forward to ensuring that we can ensure that we can create safe accommodations for air travelers with disabilities with wheelchairs. So those are just some quick highlights of some of the items that we are working on at the Department of Transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. I will say there was some excitement here in the room as you were going through the cities that were receiving the transit funds. So good, great report. Any other? Yes, we have another federal agency.
Yes, Mike Brennan from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And as the second largest federal agency, accessibility is really important to our department just because of the sheer number of employees we have, including the veterans that are employed by the agency, but also the 9 million veterans that get care benefits and services at our locations across the country. I just want to share in our commitment to accessibility in the department. We have our own VA barrier-free design standards, which go above and beyond the ADA and ABA requirements. But what, we can, like anything, you can have a design that's perfect, but over time things change operationally as there's additions, modifications, operations change. So one of the things we've committed to doing this year is we're going to put together a team to go out and survey a representative sample of 10 of our large facilities out across the nation to, one, see how we're doing with compliance over the sustained period, not just at the ribbon cutting, but after many years of operations. And also gain lessons learned when talking with the staff and the veterans in those facilities of what we could do better, even though we do believe we're doing better. We need to continue to advance accessibility for our mission for the veterans of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for that update. Any other federal agency updates? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to new business. Are there any items that any members of the board would like to raise? If so, please raise your hand in person or virtually. Okay, seeing none. So just real quick, before we officially adjourn, I wanted to thank all of you for your commitment to accessibility. This work is crucial and it is never complete. I'm reminded of the first line of the USS or the US Constitution. You can tell I'm from Boston, it's US Constitution, which is in order to form a more perfect union, which tells us that almost 250 years ago, we knew that building this nation would always be a work in progress. We look to this year ahead. I hope that that this will inspire us to keep working together, to keep striving for better, and to keep making it easier for government to serve everyone. Once again, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was 34 years ago that the ADA was signed into law. It took the strengths and talents of the Access Board, along with justice, transportation, and a host of other federal agencies to establish accessibility guidelines and standards to make buildings, facilities, vehicles, and communication accessible to people with disabilities. And looking back at the year, under Greg Fairbaugh's leadership, the Access Board published the Public Right-of-Way Final Rule, a major achievement for accessibility and the American public, and pushed through many rules through the Office of Management and Budget to review. And those of us in the federal government know that that is no small task. There is a lot more to do, and we will continue to do this work at our next meeting on October 30th. So with that, I leave you with any final remarks, Sachin? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All right, thank you, everyone. We stand adjourned.